Hamilton disqualified by FIA after Monaco Grand Prix for using less fuel to lighten the car and gain speed. Subscribe just to stay tuned for the Formula One news no one else explains to you. The afternoon sun gleamed over the iconic streets of Monte Carlo, casting golden reflections on the shimmering surface of the harbor as the 2025 Monaco Grand Prix unfolded in all its high-octane glory. From the outset, the event had all the hallmarks of a classic, an intoxicating mix of aristocratic luxury, mechanical intensity, and that omnipresent tension that makes Monaco the jewel of the Formula One calendar. Every corner of the paddock was buzzing with energy, every yacht packed with celebrities, every balcony dripping in anticipation. The circuit's unforgiving layout, with its razor-thin margins and zero tolerance for error, had once again proven why it's considered the ultimate test of concentration and control. In the midst of this glamorous chaos, Lewis Hamilton, the seven-time world champion still chasing that elusive eighth title, delivered a performance that reminded everyone why he remains one of the sport's most formidable figures. In a car that wasn't the class of the field, perhaps not even the second best, Hamilton executed a near-flawless race. Every lap was surgical, every braking point nailed with veteran finesse. Through the treacherous twists of the casino section, the claustrophobic confines of the tunnel, and the heart-stopping chicane just inches from the barriers, he never flinched. He danced his car through Monaco's urban ballet with the grace of a master, turning a race of attrition into a showcase of resilience. After 78 grueling laps, he crossed the finish line in fourth position, a result that may not have screamed glory, but one that spoke volumes of determination, precision, and grit. There was quiet satisfaction in the air. Not the thunderous celebration of victory, but the calm pride of a battle fought well. Hamilton climbed out of his car with a subtle nod, shook hands with his crew, and made his way back to the garage, helmet in hand, sweat glistening under the Monte Carlo sun. His body language said it all. No regrets, no excuses, just execution. For a team still finding its rhythm in a competitive 2025 field, those 12 points were gold. And yet, in Formula One, peace rarely lasts long. Subscribe just to stay tuned for the Formula One news no one else explains to you. The first sign that something had gone awry came not with shouting or alarms, but with the quiet approach of two FIA technical delegates toward the Mercedes garage. Their faces were unreadable, their footsteps deliberate. They requested immediate access to car number 44 for standard post-race checks, routine, expected, unremarkable. Or so it seemed. The car was rolled onto the scales. A few beeps. A pause. Then the numbers froze on the screen, 0.32 grams below the mandatory minimum weight. A number so small it would be invisible to the naked eye. Less than the weight of a raindrop. Less than a single grain of sand. And yet, in a sport governed by unforgiving regulations and razor-thin margins, it was enough to detonate a bomb. The silence in the Mercedes garage was immediate and deafening. Engineers stared at their monitors, mouths slightly agape. Mechanics froze mid-step. Conversations halted mid-sentence. The gravity of the moment hit everyone at once. According to FIA Technical Regulation Article 6.5.2, any car found to be under the minimum weight post-race, even by a fraction of a gram, is to be disqualified with no exceptions, no appeals, no negotiation. The head engineer moved quickly toward Hamilton, who had just begun removing his race boots. He leaned in and delivered the message in a whisper, barely audible over the low hum of cooling fans and chattering equipment. Hamilton's expression transformed instantly. The calm dissolved. His eyes narrowed. His brows furrowed. Are you serious? Underweight? That doesn't make sense. Not by that little. That's insane, he snapped, already on his feet and striding toward the hospitality suite with the urgency of a man refusing to accept the verdict. Inside the hospitality, chaos erupted behind closed doors. Team strategists, engineers, legal counsel, and team principal Toto Wolff were already dissecting the numbers. Fuel data, race telemetry, pit stop logs, and tire degradation patterns were being analyzed at lightning speed. The possibilities were few. Was it a fuel miscalculation? A technical malfunction? Could fragments of the car lost during the race, carbon bits from a front wing or floorboard, have accounted for the weight difference? Or was it a calibration issue with the FIA scales? Every theory was being explored, but the margin was devastatingly slim. The kind of error that shouldn't happen. The kind that didn't align with Mercedes' meticulous reputation. And yet, the cold, objective numbers didn't care about reputations. The FIA was drafting the report. The disqualification loomed. Hamilton paced like a caged lion, glancing at his engineers, his team principal, the screens, the clock. Outside, word had already spread. The media pen exploded. Reporters scrambled for confirmation. Cameras redirected toward the Mercedes hospitality. Social media went into meltdown. Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok lit up with furious debates, conspiracy theories, and emotional messages from fans around the world. Some were outraged. Some were heartbroken. A few, inevitably, were gloating. But nobody was indifferent. The world was watching. Other drivers had already caught wind of the situation. Some offered subtle gestures of sympathy, others, quiet smirks. In the ruthless arena of Formula One, there are no friends when trophies are on the line. Rival teams were already recalculating the points table. The implications were seismic. A disqualification for Hamilton would elevate the fifth-place driver into fourth, impacting not just personal stats but constructor standings, prize money, and season-long momentum. Subscribe just to stay tuned for the Formula One news no one else explains to you. By now, Hamilton had re-emerged. His jaw clenched, arms crossed, lips tight. He still hadn't spoken to the press, but his body language was screaming. You could feel the storm brewing inside him, the fury, the disbelief, the insult of being punished not for racing poorly, but for a hyper-technical infraction invisible to any spectator. This wasn't about sportsmanship. This was bureaucracy on steroids. And yet, the regulations left no room for emotion. Within the hour, the FIA made it official. Disqualified. Result annulled. 12 points wiped out. Hamilton's name scratched from the final classification. A weekend of effort gone. He finally stepped up to the cameras, voice calm but eyes burning. I gave everything today. Everything. We were clean. We were smart. We did everything right on track. And now it's all gone because of 0.32 grams. That's not racing. That's madness. The clip would go viral. His fans would rally. Critics would dissect every word. And the championship, already volatile, would take another wild twist. In Formula One, victory and heartbreak live side by side. And in Monaco, the line between legend and tragedy is thinner than a whisper. The paddock didn't just buzz, it erupted. Within minutes, the news had spread like a viral shockwave across every garage, every media center, and every hospitality suite. Technicians dropped their tools, engineers glanced nervously at their monitors, and camera crews scrambled to capture the moment. Reporters rushed to confirm what seemed like a cruel joke, but it wasn't. Lewis Hamilton had been disqualified from the Monaco Grand Prix. The reason? His Ferrari was found to be 0.32 grams under the minimum post-race weight, an infraction caused by a miscalculation of the fuel remaining in the tank. The difference was microscopic, less than the weight of a single eyelash, but it was enough. Television networks broke into their scheduled broadcasts. Push notifications flooded phones worldwide. Hashtags exploded. Within seconds, Monaco wasn't just the center of the racing world, it was the epicenter of a sporting earthquake. Inside the Ferrari paddock, tension was climbing by the second. The Ferrari crew looked like ghosts, shell-shocked, silent, and barely able to process the fallout. But nobody was more incensed than Hamilton himself. As soon as the verdict was official, he didn't wait for PR briefings or media management. He stormed through the team's hospitality suite like a tempest. The doors flew open, and all conversation ceased. Every mechanic, strategist, and engineer froze as the seven-time world champion demanded one thing. Where the hell is Fred? A team liaison rushed to notify Frederic Vasseur, but Hamilton was already moving. He didn't slow down, didn't knock, didn't wait for introductions. He burst into the private meeting room where Vasseur sat reviewing data, and the second their eyes met, the emotional detonation began. His voice was sharp, thunderous, and utterly relentless. "You've got to be joking," Hamilton shouted, eyes blazing with disbelief. "We lost a podium, no, a race win, because someone can't do basic fuel math? 0.32 grams? That's nothing. That's not a performance advantage, Fred, that's a damn technicality. You telling me this microscopic error, is worth stripping me of a victory I bled to earn." He wasn't just frustrated. He was furious. The veins in his neck pulsed, his fists clenched, and he advanced toward Vasseur with every word, his tone overflowing with betrayal and disbelief. I fought every inch of that race. I took Norris to the edge of the track. I held off Russell despite rear tire degradation. I braked late into Mirabeau, defended with precision through the swimming pool chicane, took risks in the tunnel, and now all of that means nothing? Because someone back here made a decimal point error. Vasseur stood his ground, though his jaw was tight. He didn't flinch under the verbal onslaught, but his eyes revealed the pressure building behind his diplomatic calm. "Lewis," he said carefully, "I know it's devastating, but the FIA's rules are black and white. They weighed the car 3 times. And each time, it came up short. Even by 0.32 grams, that's below regulation. We've gone over the data. It was a fuel miscalculation during the final laps. It wasn't sabotage, it wasn't negligence, it was a mistake." A mistake. Hamilton echoed, his voice dripping with contempt. "Don't insult me, Fred. I didn't come here to get thrown under the bus because someone made a mistake. I signed with Ferrari because you sold me a vision. You told me this was a team with precision, with ambition. But today? Today, we look like rookies running simulations in a video game. Not Ferrari. Not this Ferrari." And then, in a moment charged with pure fury, he ripped off his red and black team jacket and flung it across the room, the garment landing with a loud smack on the leather sofa. It was a symbolic rejection, a visible crack in the unity that Ferrari had been so desperate to maintain. At that moment, another figure appeared at the door, Charles Leclerc. Still in his suit, his hair damp with champagne from the podium ceremony, he had been celebrating what should have been a triumphant home race. But hearing the commotion, curiosity drew him into the storm. He stepped inside casually, but with a deliberate edge in his voice. "Relax, Lewis," he said, arms crossed, leaning casually against the doorway. "You know the rules. We all do. It's harsh, sure, but no one gets special treatment. The FI doesn't bend, not for me, not for you." Hamilton turned toward Leclerc like a fire being fueled. "Don't talk to me about special treatment. This isn't about favoritism, this is about fairness. You think I don't know the rule book? I've raced longer than most of you have held a license. I've won titles under pressure you've never even imagined. But what happened today wasn't just harsh, it was unjust. I earned that win. I dominated that race. And now I'm being erased from history over a molecule of fuel." Leclerc shrugged, but the smirk on his face had vanished. "I get it. It sucks. But it's racing, man. You win some, you lose some. And sometimes you lose them in the worst way possible." The silence that followed was thick enough to slice. Hamilton turned back to Vasseur one last time, his voice colder now. "You better fix this. Appeal it. Challenge it. Do something. Because I'm not going to let this become my legacy here. I didn't come to Ferrari for heartbreak, I came for history." And just like that he was gone, storming out as fast as he had entered, leaving behind a team in shock, a team principal under siege, and a teammate suddenly unsure whether today's podium was a personal victory or the spark of an internal war. Ferrari had courted Hamilton to bring back the glory days. But what they got on that stormy afternoon in Monaco was something far more volatile, a legend betrayed, a fuse lit, and a drama that had only just begun. Hamilton spun on his heels with a precision that betrayed his simmering rage. His eyes locked onto Leclerc's, seething with a fury that had clearly been bottled up for too long. "You?" he snapped, voice rising like a crack of thunder. "You're the one who's going to come in here and give me a lecture on the FIA? Are you serious right now, Charles? You, who's spent your entire career trying to get taken seriously outside of Monaco and failing at every turn? You, who doesn't even know what it feels like to fight for a world title, let alone win one? Don't stand there throwing me your little sermons. You haven't earned that right." The words hit hard, laced with venom and unfiltered contempt. Around them, heads turned. The air in the Ferrari hospitality unit thickened, as if the very molecules were bracing for an explosion. Leclerc didn't flinch. If anything, his expression hardened. His fists curled slightly at his sides, and he took a single deliberate step closer, his voice low, steady, but sharp enough to cut through steel. "I'm not speaking from a place of superiority, Lewis. I'm speaking from reality. From the present. It's you who's spiraling. It's you who can't handle what everyone else already sees. You're not the king anymore. Your crown doesn't fit. And it kills you to admit it. The moment that followed felt like the entire paddock had stopped breathing. The tension in the room could have snapped metal. Every mechanic, every engineer, every intern nearby instinctively began moving. Not with panic, but with purpose, forming a human wall, slowly inching themselves between the two drivers. Nobody dared speak. The kind of silence that only precedes something irreversible settled over the scene. One word. One twitch. And fists could have flown. Frederick Vasseur stormed in from the corridor like a man who'd heard the thunder before the lightning strike. His voice cracked like a whip through the silence, rare authority piercing the tension. Step back. Both of you. Now. His words weren't a request, they were a command. And somehow it worked. Hamilton and Leclerc remained motionless for a beat, locked in a stare that could ignite an inferno, then finally turned away, walking in opposite directions. But the electricity stayed, lingering in the air like smoke after a fire. Hamilton stormed out of the hospitality tent, his face a mask of cold fury. No interviews. No eye contact. Not a single word. Just that dangerous silence that always meant something was building. As soon as he reached his private motorhome, he slammed the door and fired up an encrypted video call. Within seconds, the screen lit up with the familiar face of Toto Wolff. The Mercedes boss blinked in surprise, his brows rising as he took in Hamilton's expression. Rage, yes, but deeper than that. Disappointment, disillusionment. Toto, Lewis began, his voice heavy, raw, unfiltered. I don't even know why I'm calling. I just needed someone who understands. He let the silence stretch, swallowing his pride for a moment. I miss it. The discipline. The structure. The precision. I miss knowing that when we showed up on Sunday, we had our shit together. No drama. No amateur hour mistakes. Just excellence. With Mercedes, I never once questioned whether the car was legal. Not once. Because we didn't operate on guesswork. We operated on truth. On perfection. Toto leaned in slightly, his gaze narrowing. I hear you. You gave them more than your name. You gave them credibility. You brought them belief. But Ferraris. Ferrari. They're driven by heart, not by process. They believe emotion wins races. Sometimes it does. But often, it gets in the way of greatness. Lewis exhaled sharply, jaw clenched, fingers tapping against the desk like a ticking clock. This 0.32 grams thing? It's not just a disqualification. It's a statement that nobody here is paying attention. That nobody double-checks the fundamentals. That winning isn't just hard, it's impossible when you're surrounded by chaos. And Charles, he thinks being loud makes him right. He thinks the paddock respects him because he shouts over me. But respect isn't given because you speak louder. It's earned with legacy. With stats. With scars. Wolff nodded slowly. I know. Believe me, I know. What happened in Austin is harsh. Brutal, even. I'd have fought it differently. I'd have gone to war with the FIA over that. But the bigger issue? You don't trust the people around you anymore. And that's fatal for a driver like you. Lewis tilted his head back, eyes closing briefly, trying to rein in the storm inside. I didn't come back to be a placeholder. I came back to finish what I started. To win again. To do it on my terms. But here? I can't even trust the numbers on the damn scale. I'm not just battling other drivers. I'm battling my own garage. My own team. And the worst part? No one seems to care. Toto's voice dropped, calm but piercing. Then remind them. Not by arguing. Not with press conferences. With laps. With data. With silence and speed. Make them feel it. Because if you want the paddock to shut up, Lewis, the only language they understand is domination. Lewis didn't respond immediately. He just stared at the screen as it faded to black, his reflection staring back at him. The message was clear. This wasn't about Charles. Or 0.32 grams. Or even Ferrari. It was about legacy. And Lewis Hamilton wasn't done writing his. Lewis Hamilton stood rigid at the back of the Ferrari garage, surrounded by the faint scent of burnt rubber and disappointment. His arms were folded tightly across his chest, his jaw clenched, and his gaze fixed on nothing and everything. 1,000 thoughts ran through his mind, each louder than the last. But when he finally spoke, his voice was a quiet detonation. "There's no margin for failure when you're no longer at Mercedes," he said, the bitterness in his tone unmistakable. "Back there, we were precision. A machine. Every screw, every stop, every strategy, it was flawless. Here, it's chaos. Every weekend is Russian roulette. They sold me a dream of dominance, and all I've received in return are justifications wrapped in red." No one in the room dared reply. The silence was suffocating. It wasn't just the weight of his words, it was the truth buried within them. And even if someone had wanted to speak, what could they possibly say to a man who had already built his legacy in gold and now felt he was being dragged through gravel? Far away, Toto Wolff watched from a Sky Sports monitor, alone in a hospitality room thick with media whispers. Cameras caught a fleeting glimpse of his face, just as the FIA's ruling flashed across the screen. He didn't say a word, but the expression was devastating, a subtle but telling storm of pride, regret, sadness, and that look of someone watching a part of his past crumble. His eyes narrowed ever so slightly, not in judgment, but in recognition. He knew this version of Lewis: wounded, cornered, explosive. The news of the penalty, a 0.32-gram fuel discrepancy, exploded across the internet like wildfire igniting a powder keg. Fans mobilized instantly. On X, Instagram, TikTok and YouTube, opinions clashed like thunder. Some defended Lewis like zealots, crying foul, accusing the FIA of waging a personal crusade against the British icon. "This is political," one viral post read. "It's not about fuel, it's about control. You don't derail greatness over dust." Others mocked the outcry, pointing out that rules don't bend for legends, no matter how many trophies sit on their shelves. The hashtags #Hamilton betrayed, #fuel scandal, #Monaco meltdown, and #Justice for Lewis were trending worldwide in under 20 minutes. Sky Sports, Channel 4, F1 TV, all launched emergency coverage. Pundits couldn't get to the microphones fast enough. Martin Brundle, visibly emotional, didn't mince words. "This is what separates contenders from champions," he declared. "People will say it's just 0.32 grams. But Formula One isn't forgiving. That minuscule number is the cliff between glory and ruin. And tonight, Ferrari fell off it." At Maranello, the atmosphere was toxic. Within Ferrari's inner sanctum, trust was crumbling by the second. Engineers whispered behind closed doors. Some speculated that the relationship between Lewis and Frédéric Vasseur had gone beyond strained, that it was reaching a breaking point. Others said Leclerc had formally requested a private debrief, not about strategy, but about team dynamics, respect, boundaries. One insider claimed Leclerc felt undermined by Hamilton's increasing emotional outbursts and wanted clear lines redrawn. Ferrari had signed Hamilton to lead, to inspire, to deliver. Instead, they were watching their structure fracture under the weight of one of the greatest names in the sport. And all of it, every argument, every whispered betrayal, sparked by a discrepancy so small it wouldn't tip a feather: 0.32 grams. Lewis didn't show up to the team dinner. He didn't respond to journalists. He ignored his phone. The only sign of life came hours later, on Instagram. A black screen. White letters. No hashtags. No location. Just this: excellence demands perfection. 0.32 grams. Unforgivable. The post garnered over 18 million views within hours, a chilling testament to how far-reaching this controversy had become. Drivers liked it. Rivals shared it. Fans turned it into a digital shrine to injustice. Even inside Mercedes, staff privately admitted they were shaken. One mechanic said, "I don't think he ever emotionally left us. And after tonight, I think he wishes he hadn't physically either." Sponsors began calling Ferrari's front office, demanding answers. Some hinted at re-evaluating their commitments. F1 executives started whispering about the long-term implications, what this might mean for the Hamilton brand, for Ferrari's season, and for the championship narrative. Was this a blip? Or was it a fracture that would only deepen with every race? Monaco, the crown jewel of the F1 calendar, had become a battlefield. The glitz and glamour felt like a cruel joke. The champagne had turned bitter. The night air, once filled with laughter and celebration, now echoed with quiet scandal. The press called it the 0.32-gram Grand Prix. Others dubbed it Hamilton's Hell in Heaven. And as the lights of Monte Carlo flickered into the night, somewhere far from the paddock, Lewis Hamilton sat alone, a man made of legacy and frustration, contemplating the sport that had once lifted him into immortality but now, in a blink, felt like it had turned its back. This wasn't about fuel. It was about betrayal. It was about expectations shattered, respect forgotten, and a champion questioning everything. In a world where milliseconds determine greatness and grams decide fates, Formula One had just reminded everyone. No matter how famous your name, how heavy your trophy cabinet, or how many championships you own, this sport doesn't forgive. It doesn't forget. It measures everything. Down to the last breath. Down to the last drop. And tonight, it measured Lewis Hamilton. And found him lacking.